Thank you again so much, Lisa, for joining me today. And for those who don't know, I want to go ahead and introduce my friend Lisa, who is one of my friends, and I'm super excited to be able to actually talk with her today and share her knowledge with you guys. Lisa is a seasoned professional with a wealth of experience in veterinary medicine. She graduated from Texas A&M University with a degree in biomedical science and has dedicated 23 years to veterinary medicine, working both as a technician and as a manager. Her areas of expertise include healthy weight loss and management, pet nutrition, pain management, and senior wellness for pets. She holds certifications in pet nutrition and pet therapeutic nutrition through Vetfolio, ensuring she stays at the forefront of her field. Beyond her professional accomplishments, she proudly embraces the title of Jiminy's mom, reflecting her deep love and care for her furry family members. So welcome again, Lisa. Furry Jiminy is in the back. And what's he doing over there? There he is. Is he getting ready to take a siesta? Hey, there's Jiminy.
He's always ready for a nap.
See, you and Dexter would be good BFFs. I'm telling you, with your sniffy walks and your siestas and not big. Does he like his baths?
He sulks. He tolerates, but he sulks. He doesn't enjoy wet.
Oh, yeah. That's Dexter. He doesn't really like to be wet. I tried to take him swimming when he was younger, and he's like, what are you doing to me? This is not entertaining.
Yeah, that's his least favorite part of physical therapy.
Yeah, Dexter too, that darn water treadmill, Let's do the other parts, eating his snacks, and I'll be fine. But Lisa is here today with me, and we're going to talk about healthy weight loss with our dogs. We're going to focus on dogs today, but I'm sure she has some information on cats too. Yeah. And as with everything, I will drop some links at the bottom in the description so that you can follow Lisa and her veterinary practice and her social media below, and also a way for you to contact her if you have any questions. And I'm sure she's going to talk about things that will do some additional links as well too. So the first thing I want to ask is, how can you tell if your dog needs to lose weight?
Well, one of the best ways to do that is to ask your veterinarian and their team when it is time for your pet's wellness exam. Or if you're concerned at all, ask for a consultation. But if you're at home and you're just looking at your dog, there's a couple of things that you can do. One of the things that you have to remember is dogs should have a waistline. So when you're looking at your dog from the top down, and if we have furry dogs like Jiminy, like Dexter, and although he's had a haircut, have to take into account the hair, but after their rib cage, they should tuck in. They should almost have a little hourglass figure when viewed from the top. They should have a nice little waist and then flare back out in their little hips. And when you feel around the rib cage, they should have just a very light padding of tissue there. You shouldn't have to press very hard to find their ribs. They shouldn't be squishy. Your dog is starting to look a little bit more like a sausage all the way down, then that's too much weight. From the side, when you're looking at your dog, they should have a tuck after the rib cage. So if you're looking at them from the side, they should have their rib cage. It should tuck up where their abdomen is before they get to their rear legs. So that is there's some breed changes in there, but that silhouette is normal for a healthy dog.
Okay. And is it easier to, we talked about your furry dogs like our Cavaliers. I find that it's a little easier for me if Dexter's wet. Do you find that the case for our furry dogs?
Yes. And when Jiminy has his full coat, even though he's at a healthy weight now, he looks larger. Yeah. And it's easy if you don't put your hands on him or you don't see him when he's had a bath, to think he's overweight. So it is very important when you've got a heavy coated dog or a furry dog to put your hands on them or view them, like you said, when they're wet. So they're flat.
Yeah. And like you said too, I had the same thing, and Jiminy, like Dexter, they're large for their breed. So they're taller. Doesn't mean they have to be fatter. But when people say, how much does Dexter weigh? And I tell them 30 pounds, they, their chins drop because they think, oh my gosh, he's so fat. When ideally, in reality, 30 pounds for Dexter is his ideal weight for his senior. Now, when he was young and spry and more active and muscle tones, we kind of pushed 29, 28, and he was on the lean side. But, his vet's very happy with the 30. But because of that fluffy fur and my lack of grooming technique, he does kind of look like a fur ball, and when someone said that to me, like, just seeing a picture of him, like, oh, he's fat, it's heartbreaking. You know, we want to know when our pets are heavy and overweight, but it really can be a little rude just to say that fluffy dog is fat without getting, like you said, getting your hands on them and actually seeing them.
Yes, it's an important thing that they teach in for veterinary students and veterinary technician students is a body condition scoring system from 1 to 9. 9 being obese, 1 emaciated, 5 being perfection. So they learn to grade the animal based on that 9-point scale by looking at their body, putting their hands on them, not just a number. The numbers, like you said, Dexter and Jiminy are over the breed standard in some. But their number, their 30 pounds is perfect.
Right. Now, is that a chart that people have access to that we can do a link and let them kind of see what it looks like too?
Absolutely. And there's a visual on the body chart system. They have one for cats and one for dogs on the 9-point scale. It's easy to find. We'll get a link together. But they have a visual on what does that number look like on a dog.
Okay, great. Good. Thank you. And I do, you talked about talking with your vet, and, I have a great vet. They're, really good at saying, you know what, we need to drop 1 pound for Dexter, so really nice at that. But I've also seen the other end of the scale where the vets aren't saying anything when their dogs are overweight. So do you have any tips for pet parents to, be more proactive, just keep touching their dog and bringing it up if they feel like their pet's overweight and the vet hasn't said anything to them?
Exactly. Be your pet's advocate. So when you go to the veterinary and being in the veterinary field I can see both sides of it because I've been both the client and the technician and the vet staff. So sometimes there are so many things we're bringing up in an exam that may get overlooked. Okay. So your pet's advocate, ask, how does their body condition look? How is their muscle scoring if they're a senior? Are they underweight? Are they overweight? Are they perfect? So it's always good to ask, and they will be happy to assist you with that.
Oh, good.
It can be a little bit more of an uncomfortable conversation for some veterinarians and veterinary technicians if they're not as comfortable with it, but it's definitely a good idea to ask.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. What would you say some of the common reasons are that a dog would be overweight? Are there some common things that you see?
Yes. So everybody thinks about too many treats, too much food, and too many calories can definitely play a factor. But there's more to it than that. There are a lot of pet foods that are out on the market that if you read the bag label, and if I were to read a bag label and feed Jiminy for a 30-pound dog, sometimes that range is anywhere from 20 to 40 pounds. He's in that range.
If you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. It tells YouTube that you like the video and shows it to more pet parents and keeps our content coming your way.
Or am I feeding him for a 20-pound dog in that range? And what people don't realize with those labels, when they were doing testing on those labels, most of those dogs were young, very fit, very active, and not spayed or neutered a lot of times. So their metabolism's different and every dog's metabolic rate is different. So feeding by a label, although that's the first thing most people look at when they're trying to do their best for their pet, may not necessarily work for their pet. So they may need more or less calories or a different type of food altogether. The other thing we see is having multiple members of the household feeding the pet. So maybe the dog isn't going to necessarily tell you that mom already gave breakfast before she went to work. So if somebody else wants to feed, if they didn't know and there wasn't time to communicate, maybe they got 2 breakfasts that day. Maybe the toddler is starting to throw things off the high chair and the dog is definitely not going to say no to that. Maybe they got 3 or 4 little chew treats that day because everyone's given them a cookie because the dog's adorable and they love the dog. So that can be a factor too, that sometimes we have to sit down and have a management strategy for that. And then above and beyond that, there could be lack of exercise or lack of appropriate exercise to burn off the calories they're taking in. But there also can be underlying medical conditions like hypothyroidism, very common in middle-aged and older dogs. Like Jiminy has hypothyroidism. And with that illness, they are unable to regulate their metabolic rate normally. So they can almost, we say, gain weight on air. They keep gaining weight. It's very hard for them to lose weight. It's very hard for them to maintain a normal body condition without that being addressed.
And with that disease, is that something that they're usually born with, or something that you said that they develop in middle age? So is there like a sign, like all of a sudden we're gaining weight?
So typically, you can see it in younger dogs, but typically this is a disease that manifests in middle age and older dogs. There are certain breeds that are more predisposed, but you can see it across the board in any dog. You typically will start to see the dog gaining weight, even if they haven't had a change in their diet, they haven't had a change in their routine or their treats or anything else. They just seem to be gaining weight. Sometimes their hair coat can start to change. It look a little more dull, a little more dry, maybe even thin out. There may be even an abnormal distribution to fat on the dog, where they just seem to be a little lumpier, strange. They look different overall, and they may have a decreased activity level. They just feel a little more lethargic. They're not necessarily ill, just not as interested in getting up and doing the things that they want to do. It depends on how far the disease has progressed.
Okay. And you said that it can happen in any age, but it's common in middle age. So is this something that most pet parents are aware of, or that they chop it up to my dog's older and he's just, not getting the exercise, he's putting on weight? Should we be proactive then to speak with the dog's veterinarian about maybe we should test for this?
So it's definitely something to discuss with a veterinarian around middle age with your dog, or sooner if you start to notice changes in their body condition. It is not something I would say that the average client is always just aware of. It's something we educate a lot of clients on, especially when I'm looking at a dog that is over their ideal body condition. And I'll talk to them about the fact that we're going to come up with a nutrition plan, a feeding plan, an exercise plan. But in face of that, if this is an older or middle-aged dog and they do not lose weight when everything's been managed properly, then we start talking about, well, let's start screening for things that might be impeding your success, like hypoglycemia. So it's definitely a conversation that you can have, and it can be part of a normal senior wellness screening on an annual or biannual basis.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. So what are some of the things that we can do to help our pets lose weight?
So a couple of things. One is adequate calories. So just like with us, calories in, calories out, we can't out exercise a bad kitchen. So if we are overfeeding our dogs or feeding them a food by the label, it looks like it's what they're supposed to be eating, but it's a very nutrient dense food, and maybe like Jiminy here, who's more of a relaxed sort of fellow, who's not going to get out there and run all day. He's certainly not going to play fetch. And he's not going to pound the pavement a lot. So he doesn't need as many calories as even is on the label that says he should have. He needs much less than that. So that's something that's going to be a little hard for a pet parent to determine. I will say that. You can look at the food you're feeding your dog. You can feed the label, what it states on there as a starting point. But if your dog is over or under condition, then it's time to talk to your veterinarian and say, number one, is this appropriate food for my dog? Do I need to switch? Do I need to look at something else? Is this how much of this food should I be feeding if it is a good diet? And they can help you with that, because there are all sorts of calculations and things that we can do that tell us exactly how many calories your dog needs on a daily basis to maintain their health and their body condition, or lose weight or gain weight, depending on what their condition is. But as far as, so the calories are important, but just as important is movement, getting them out in movement. So we know that motion is the lotion. It's important for all of us to get out there and move a little bit. We do not have to run marathons. We do not have to be an Olympic athlete. We can really let our dogs set their own pace. And I am not going to take Jiminy for several miles of a walk every day. That's not appropriate for a dog like him.
Right.
He'd enjoy. It would be hard for him. So I'm going to take him out and let him do his Snif-fari. As long as he's interested, I'm going to watch him for signs of fatigue or heat stress or anything like that, depending on what time of the year that we're in. And I'm going to cut off his exercise when I think it's appropriate. But I'm going to take him out several times a day, so he has the appropriate time to move and burn some calories. And that's important for all of our dogs, but it's important to find something that is enjoyable for our pets, They can go out there and burn a little energy, but it does not have to be high impact. It doesn't have to be chasing the ball over and over again where they're pounding on their joints and they can cause injury. We especially don't want to do that with a dog that is already overweight. It can put some serious stress on joints, and particularly the knees and the elbows, and they can cause severe injury that might require surgery later. We don't want to do that. We also don't want to have weekend warriors where they're couch potatoes all week and then we decide we're going to take a 5-mile walk on Saturday. That is also not good. Regular low impact exercise is fine, on a daily basis, controlled, where they're not getting too rambunctious and at risk of hurting themselves. It's something that they enjoy. It's just a matter of finding out, what does your dog love?
So is there any rule of thumb, like how much to increase, like gradually increase it 5% or 5 minutes, or, that sort of thing? Kind of a starting point?
You can do that. And that would be where your veterinary team is really going to come into play, because they can give you a starting point. Because for instance, Jiminy, when I adopted him, 50 pounds, morbidly obese. We diagnosed with a lot of arthritis when shortly after I got him. He is not one that I would have wanted to start off with mile walks, right? So his walks were very short. They were down the block and back at a very slow. He wanted to go more. He was excited, but that would have risked injury for him and worsening of his issues. So it was enough that it was controlling his calories, and we were getting some daily activity a few times a day. And then gradually we did increase that. And I watched to see was he still enjoying this? Was it a chore, or was this still fun for him? Because if it's not fun, then that's really not going to be something your dog's going to enjoy. They're going to start avoiding that sort of interaction with you. And you want this to be a fun partnership with you and your dog as you're, increasing their exercise. So it's hard to come up with a hard and fast rule of percentages. It really depends on how the dog is doing. If at any time sometimes we need to go down and give them a little recoup time. Sometimes we can stage it up a little quicker. Sometimes we have to go a little slower. So that's where it's really good to engage your veterinary team.
Good. So are there any signs that you can look at, like, oh, my dog's not enjoying it? You said as long as Jiminy's enjoying it, like, they stop walking or they have a bad day the next day. Are there any tip-offs that it was too much for them?
Exactly. So some of the things you mentioned there, if I were to show him the leash, for instance, and he throws himself down, and sometimes he'll do that. He's tired. He doesn't want to go for a walk. That's okay. He's just going to say no. But if your dog starts to avoid that, when they see the leash come out, it's not excitement anymore. It's kind of I really don't want to go to the gym. It's kind of like us. I'm tired. I don't want to go today. So we can look for signs like that. We can look for signs of them slowing on the walk, losing interest in their surroundings. Because most of the time, a dog on a walk is excited. There's smells, there's sights, there's all sorts of things. When they start to disengage and they're just kind of hang dog and they're just plodding along because you're walking, that's the time to say, okay, let's turn around. I think we're at a stopping point here. If they have to stop and sit down frequently, if the next day they are tired or sore or not engaging in the normal activities, those are indications that it's gone a little too far and we need to scale back.
Okay, great. And like you said, during the walk, as a trainer, I've had so many people tell me that their dog, is refusing to walk, and he's doing it because he's trying to rule the roost, so to speak. And I'm like, there's probably some other things going on, whether it's physical or mental. So I think it's really nice point that you said that if we're all of a sudden, slowing down, plopping our butt on the ground, that sort of thing, that it doesn't necessarily mean that our dog's just refusing to walk because he's being a turkey, but that there's an actual reason for it. So, always listen to our dogs. I think is so important for people to always remember that our dogs are always telling us something, and we just have to listen to that. So that's great.
Exactly. We have to be their advocates. And we're using walks as an example, but walks are not the only form of exercise for our dogs by far. And some of these dogs, like Jiminy, when we started out, they really needed an alternative form of exercise that's a little gentler on their joints and their system, like swimming, although it's not his favorite. But that was something we started out with his physical therapist because of his unique orthopedic conditions. He was swimming twice a week, and that was how we started. Very short swims, we built up on that.
Hi everyone, are you loving this content so far? Do you want to dive even deeper into the world of positive dog training and natural care? If so, you'll want to join my amazing community on Patreon. I have a variety of tiers to meet everyone's needs. Plus, by becoming a member, not only will you receive fun perks, your support also helps me continue creating the content you love. So thank you, and let's get back to the video.
Is it common? Do you recommend doing a physical therapist often with these dogs that are overweight? You know, maybe if they're obese overweight versus a couple pounds overweight, does that seem to be helpful for them?
Yes, it does. And they don't necessarily have to go twice a week and visit with the therapist like Jiminy does. He was a unique combination of overweight and a bunch of joint issues. So he really needed a specialist. But it's good to have an appointment and a starting point. And the therapist can recommend either in-person sessions or even give some exercises at home that will be helpful to get the dogs mobile again, to help with their joints in a safe manner that's going to protect them from injury.
I love doing therapy with Dexter too. And I think it is important, like you said, to have that first evaluation so they can tell you this would work really well, so that you're not just trying to guess, you know, so that you have a nice little plan. You know, you're working with your physical therapist, you're working with your dog's veterinarian, and you have that teamwork and be able to track their progress and do it safely. So great ideas about the physical therapy too.
Yes. And the other thing that you see with some of these guys that are overweight or obese is once you get the weight loss, underneath that dog who looked so large is a very poorly muscled dog. So appropriate exercise to help them rebuild that muscle, or if they're seniors, maintain that muscle that they have, is vitally important. So when Jiminy lost all that weight, he had the skinniest little back end you'd ever seen there, especially with his left leg where he had more trouble. It was amazingly how small he looked. So it took a long time to build up stable muscle back there, which was later really important when he had hip surgery. So it's important to try to intervene as early as possible so these dogs are as healthy as they can be going into those senior years with their joints and their mobility.
So yeah, so not just about dropping weight, but getting that muscle tone back where it needs to be. So do you have any tips for pet parents on choosing a healthy diet, especially for those who are trying to use, you know, fresh foods, wholesome foods, that sort of thing?
Sure. Well, one of the things is that we always say is we feed the pet in front of you. Not every diet is appropriate for every dog. It's just like people. That's why there's so many pet foods and types of pet foods available, because every pet is unique. And I don't necessarily recommend any one specific diet. I'm going to look and see what is my patient currently eating, or what is Jiminy currently eating. Do they enjoy it? Are they excited about mealtime? So if your pet is lackluster and not eating the food eagerly, then we need to make a different call, because they need to eat for the nutrition. They need to get the nutrition in. They're not excited about it. That's our first problem. So do they eat it eagerly? Do they clean their plate? Are they excited about their mealtime? So that's one of the first things I like to ask, because very rarely will you truly find a finicky eater. Usually there's a problem underlying there. Either it is a problem with the type of food, the texture of food, the aroma, the protein source. There's something medically underlying. So we need to kind of get to the baseline of that. So the dogs, if they're healthy, and they're on the right diet, they should be very excited to eat it. Your pet, something that also your pets, does their system tolerate this food well? So do they have healthy stool? Do they have a healthy amount of stool? Are they going all the time because there's too much in the diet? Are they not going every day like they ought to go every day? Is when you pick that stool up, is it easy, or is it a train wreck to try to get in the bag? So then do they vomit? Do they regurge? Do they, are there things that are, it's upsetting to their system? We need to look at something different for them, because it's not meshing well. And it's got to be something that, even if they like it, is it good for them? Are they thriving on it? Do they have healthy muscles tone? Do they have a healthy body condition? Do they have a beautiful coat on this diet? Is it reflecting in their overall health that this is what they ought to be on? Or do we need to make a different call? So it's not always about what particular food, it's the right food for that pet. And sometimes it's a trial and error. We've got to go through a couple of things until we find out what is the perfect fit.
Okay. So if just again, I know you're not seeing the dog in front of you, but if a pet parent's trying to have their dog lose weight, the dog seems to like their food, their coat looks good, their stools look good, would you say then it's probably a matter of cutting the calories on that food likely then?
If we don't have an underlying medical condition like hypothyroidism, then yes, we're looking at too many calories. And a lot of foods are very nutrient dense, and that's okay. It just, maybe we need to do a little bit less of it. And sometimes we cut back the calories too. We look at how many calories in that food. And I also incorporate, are they getting edible chews or treats or anything else that they put in their mouth? Things that disguise medication. We don't always think about that, you know? But that is part of their calories. Do they have any supplements that have calories associated with them? So we have to look at everything that goes in their mouth every day and add all those calories up and see where do we need to tweak. The majority of their calories, 90% of their calories needs to come from their diet and not necessarily just from the extras. So the extra things, treats are fine, and treats are love. I'm never going to say you can't give treats, but let's look at a cookie budget. You know, let's make a budget, and this is how many cookies. And if you live in a multi-person household and everyone loves to give cookies, then those treats go in a jar for the day. Those are the cookies. And when the jar is empty, that's it. We're done. We're done with cookies days. So we can, most of the time we can get to the bottom line of it's too much. It's too much energy for the output that the dog has. So let's just adjust it. And I always tell my client, if don't communicate with me. Let me know if your dog is trying to eat you out of house and home because they're starving. They're so hungry. There are things we can do with that. There are things we can tweak with fiber. So there are little fiber additives that are healthy for the dog. They're healthy for their stool and their gut, for their microbiome, but they give a feeling of satiety without adding a lot of calories. So, you know, that's when we can talk to your veterinarian about what else can we do so they don't feel so miserable and hungry all the time, like we would going on a crash diet. But they're healthy and they're sated.
Okay, good. Now, again, we want to promote that our people are going with their vet to work on the calories and that sort of thing. But is there a rule of thumb on how many calories they can safely drop from their diet? You know, like a percentage of calories?
If I were just going to have the average lay person start out, I would start out with maybe no more than a 10% drop.
Okay.
No more than that. And just see what your dog does. How does their behavior change? Do they have weight loss? And on average, you know, it really depends on the size of the dog, but you really wouldn't want more than, it depends on I would say that this is hard because on Jiminy, with a dog of his size that I was tracking for his weight, I wanted no more than half a pound a week of weight loss. And that was with a very strict diet. That can be a little bit more with a larger dog. It has to be quite a bit less with a younger dog, and never want weight loss in a puppy. When we're looking at growth, that's a totally different thing. And that's not what we're talking about here. So a 10% drop, if the client just wants to try that, or the pet parent wants to try that on their own, they can do that. And if that's not helping and that's not working, the dog is miserable and wanting to eat everybody's everything, then it's time to talk to the vet and let's get the actual math out and do a diet plan.
Yeah. And, you know, I always promote going to that vet, you know, because it's, you know, they're the professional, they can do the weigh-ins and that sort of thing. It's always so helpful.
Yes. Weigh-ins are so nice. If you can get your dog up to the clinic, if they're small enough to you have a scale at home, that's great. But if you can get them up to the clinic just at least once a month when they're on their weight loss journey, and let's track it and adjust as we need to. And that's what I do with the pets on my weight loss plans at the clinic.
And the other thing too is when you're taking when you're taking your dog into the vet and getting the scale and getting the weight, they're having a positive experience with being at the vet. They're not having that, you know, being poked and being scared. So we can work on that behavior and that training that way too, because you're going, okay, vet visits aren't so scary after all. So that's another benefit. And I used to do that with Dexter when he was a puppy, just to get into the vet office so that he learned that the vet office isn't scary. I could keep tracking his weight, make sure everything was good. And you talked about the cookie jar with the cookie jar for the day, having the treats in there. And that just reminded me when Dexter was a puppy, because he was doing a lot of training, you know, going to class and walks and his yappy hours and stuff. I did the similar thing. You know, I had his bowl of food and treats and calories, and I just, when it was gone, it was gone. He got that every day, and it just was however I dished it out. And, if there was a day that, and again, he wasn't going on a weight loss, he was a puppy, but if it was a day that I went over the calories, that just told me like, oh, I better, tighten that belt tomorrow and get back on track. But it was always a nice visual to kind of keep that in line.
Yes, exactly. And sometimes it can be one of the things that you can do, because you talked about training, and training is something that should happen all through their lives, right? You promote that. It's so good for the seniors, for the neuroplasticity of their brain. So they should never stop training. They can work for some of their food if they'd like. If they like it that much, you can use part of their diet as part of the training program. And if you use treats above and beyond that, we just need to integrate the calories in their daily budget. Part of his breakfast goes to my pocket, and work on eye contact when he's walking. Every time he checks in with me, because he's starting to get a little hard of hearing, so it's important for safety reasons, as well as just being able to walk politely, to check in with him now and then. So he gets a reward every time he looks up and makes eye contact.
Yes. And if they're on a, healthy diet, I don't, what I do with Dexter is if I say he gets, say, 90% of meat in his diet, I can not do the food portion of that and do like freeze-dried beef or, that sort of thing, and use that treat as part of his reward, but as part of his nutritional calories that he needs every day. So there's lots of, like you said, lots of ways that we can utilize food calories for training without going over.
Yes, exactly.
So are there some common challenges that dog parents face when they're trying to help their dog lose weight?
So we talked a little bit about the inaccuracies you could sometimes find in pet food labeling, that it doesn't always apply to your dog. So that's a challenge, because the pet parent wanting to do what's best for their pet is going to look at their food, and this is what the label says they need to eat, so I'm feeding them what the label says. And that's not a bad starting point, but it may just not be the right fit for their pet. So it's not necessarily that they're doing anything wrong. It's just their pet needs something different. So that's a bit of a challenge. The fact that the pet food industry is so overwhelming. There's so many options there that they don't know exactly, are they feeding the best thing for their pet? Are they doing it right? Should they make a change? Should they add this and this and this and this, or just feed them the diet in the bag? So there's a lot of confusion there, and that's understandable. So that's a challenge for them too, is what do I feed my pet? Am I doing the right thing for my pet? And there's always that question. Having multiple people in the household, we talked about that. That can always also be a factor. And that can be managed. Medical issues. Obviously, under undiagnosed medical issues that impact their metabolism, time in the day. That's always a challenge for all of us, especially all that work, and we want to make sure that our pet gets the time outside that they need and exercise. But sometimes that's hard, and that can be a challenge. So carving out that time in the day so they do get that walk or that exercise time that they need can be challenging in a day. So sometimes putting their food in a food puzzle, so they're moving around a little bit more, is a little bit, it can be something you can integrate so that their mind and their body is busy when you yourself are so busy that that walk around the block is not, you can't really manage that at that time. So
those are good ideas and good tips. So I'll throw one at you. What about when there's multiple dogs? Do you have any tips on how to do that? How do they do the interactive treat toy with the second dog in the house?
Sure. So that can be a little bit of a challenge. And sometimes if your dogs are crate trained and they're comfortable in their crates, then you could do a rotation basis. So if somebody has a toy, say like a Snuffle mat, the Snuffle mat can actually go into the crate with the dog, and they can enjoy the Snuffle mat in the crate without being pestered by their housemates. If it's a toy like some of the ones that Jiminy likes that roll around the entire room, then maybe his buddies need to be crated in another room, which he doesn't have buddies, but if he did, in another room and doing something else, and he has his time out with his toy, and then he gets put up, and then they get his next friend gets a rotation and a chance at the toy. So it can be worked on a rotational basis. And if you have multiple family members, then maybe the housemate can go for a walk while the other dog enjoys the food puzzle, and then they get to switch.
That's a good idea. That's a real good idea. So does your veterinary office offer any kind of weight management programs for the public or their clients?
We do. It's called our Positively Fit Club. And what we do is when we enroll a pet in that is I go over a diet plan with them, a nutrition plan, and we look at a lot of things we've already talked about. Is it a right diet for them? Do we need to make a switch? Do we need to stick with what they're eating because they love it and it's doing well for them, other than being too many calories? And go through everything that goes in their mouth all day long, so we can make sure we account for everything. And then we come up with a plan on how much of the diet, the main diet to feed, how much is left over for cookies or, little treats, or their very, very favorite chewy that they can't live without. And if you don't integrate it into the plan, it's going to happen anyway. So you might as well integrate it into the plan. And then we come up with a starting exercise plan for them, some recommendations. And then we check in with them on a monthly basis, if not a little bit more frequently, to make sure, is it working? And often, and this can be discouraging, but often in the very beginning, if we don't have an underlying medical cause, we've managed the diet very well, there's some good weight loss in the very beginning. And then there's a plateau. And that's normal in weight loss. It can be a little frustrating, though, for the owner when they're doing everything right and they just seem to stagnate, and they're not losing weight. But if they if you hold the course, they will normally start trending down again. So that's just something to bear in mind when you're on a weight loss journey. It's a journey. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I counsel my pet parents on is that this isn't just like, everybody in the 80s and 90s went on a crash diet. You went on a diet and then you lost the weight you wanted to lose and then you could eat what you wanted. Well, what happened when you went back to eating what you wanted? You gained all that weight back and more than that usually. So this is a lifestyle change. It's a weight loss journey, but when we get to that journey's end, we're going to stay the course there. It is not going back to just the giant scoop of food and all the treats we want and everything off the table plate. So it is a lifestyle change. Just like it should be for people if they're on that journey.
Great. And so are there any resources for pet parents, whether they're with your clinic or online, that they might be able to, because I know that not all veterinary offices are going to be like yours and have such a great program. So if they're working with their vet, but their vet doesn't have those kind of resources for them, is there some place that they can go to kind of add to their program?
There is a website called Pet Obesity Prevention. And we can put that, I'll send you the link for that so you can embed it here. And it has lots of tools and information on it on healthy weight loss for your pet. There's also a brand new app that I actually learned about at the veterinary conference this year. It's so cute. It's called Chubby Dog Nation. Oh. Chubby Dog Nation helps you remind how much to feed your dog, when to feed your dog, how much exercise to track, how much weight they're supposed to be losing. And it helps you along the way, which it's just a fun little tool to have. So those are really good. There are a couple of the Purina Institute has some great tools online as far as calculating healthy weight loss and body condition scoring. And those are available online too. And those body condition scores are also available online. So you can kind of track if, the veterinarian said my dog is a 7 out of 9, what does that look like? And what are we supposed to look like at a 5, which is what our goal is.
Okay. Now, what about like the trackers that they use on their neck to do exercise and stuff? Do you find those helpful?
Those are very helpful. In fact, Jiminy wears one. He wears the Fee brand collar 5. I don't know how they say that. But there are a number of trackers out there. Most of them they're all very similar. Some of them do different things as far as safety tracking more than just activity tracking, but they're all really, really helpful. And he has worn one since I adopted him so that I could track, I could set a goal for him. I could change that goal as needed. And I could track his activity during the day because maybe he was more active than I realized, just moving around and his daily puttering around the house. And maybe he was less active than I thought. I thought we were at the goal. And at the end of the day, I'm like, wow, we did not do very well today, buddy. But that helps keep me honest. And it is more of an objective measurement of his activity than a subjective where I thought, yeah, we did good. We had a good long Snif-fari, but the rest of the day he was snapping all day. So, that was really great. So they're very helpful tools. They're very helpful tools. And
yeah, go ahead.
Proof too. So if they swim, you keep the tracker on them.
Oh, good. And do you happen to know, Dexter doesn't wear a collar because of his Chiari, but he wears a harness. Do they still work if they're attached to a harness?
Yes, in fact, Jiminy's feed tracker is on his harness because he has the same issue that Dexter does, and I don't like to put anything heavy on his neck. So I have it. They do make attachments. They make harnesses actually that will come with a connector for that specific tracker. But some of the other trackers have little zip ties, so you can really put them on anything. You can put them on or a collar. So it depends on the tracker. And Etsy, which is the wonderful online crafting website, they make little pouches that have Velcro. And so you can stick those trackers in there and put them on anything you want. And they're accurate still on that.
That's great. So like if you dress him up like Jiminy going to his therapy and switching out his harness or whatever, you just pop it on.
He has many outfits. So yes, anything he wears pretty much. And they're nice. Some of these trackers also do things like they track other health parameters for your pet's sleep and wake cycle and things like that. So there are other things that you can learn from these trackers that give you great information about your pet's health.
That's great. It's good to know. And I like that you said that they're waterproof too, because you can think about that water therapy that they do with the swimming. So
it counts. All that counts in his exercise plan.
Yeah. All right. So do you have any final advice or tips for pet parents that are trying to help their dogs lose weight?
My biggest thing would be patience. Have patience with yourself and with your pet. Don't get too stressed about it because it's easy to blame yourself and feel terrible, that your pet is their health is compromised by their weight. But everyone loves their pet. They're doing the best that they can, and with the information that they have. So it's just be your pet's advocate. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself some grace, and remember, it's a journey. It's not a deadline that you finish line that you have to make in a certain amount of months. It is a journey, and so this is your pet's entire life that you're going to be feeding them and learning how to do it appropriately. So just give yourself some grace and utilize your veterinary team.
Oh, that's great. Oh, Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today. It was really a lot of helpful information, and I learned a lot, and I'm going to actually look up some of those trackers too, because I've been wanting to check them out for Dexter. And Jiminy, are you back there still sleeping?
He's snoring.
You're snoring? Snoring with your eyes open?
One eye open.
He's got to keep that eye on his mama.
Exactly. I could be eating something. You never know.
Yeah. I'd say that'd probably be one of the hard things too. Those big eyes saying, "I wouldn't mind a bite of that apple."
Exactly. Well, that is part of his plan. If he's a polite boy and he's not begging and he leaves me alone and doesn't pester me when I'm eating, then at the end of that, he gets appropriate cookie for him.
Thank you so much for joining me, and it was a pleasure to talk with you.
You too. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks.
Bye.
If you're enjoying today's video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I dive deep into all things dog training, natural care, and healthy living for you and your dog.